everybody in YouTube land, and welcome once again to another episode of Lancing with myself, the 5-minute show where I give you a little bit of my brain, a little bit of advice, a little bit of an insight into the process of game design and being a creative when you're low on spoons and low on cash. Today I want to talk about PAX Australia, to be specific, not Pacific. For those of you who aren't in Australia, this won't be particularly relevant, but if you are in Australia, or even if you're not, PAX Australia is one of the best events that you can get to in the world. In America, PAX originally, which stands for Penny Arcade Expo, named after the comic, it was originally only a tight focus on computer games, and they actually had to add PAX Unplugged to focus on tabletop games. But in Australia, it's always been a half and half con. In fact, PAX Australia has always had the largest tabletop area of any con, and in fact we were really hungry for it. Back in 2008, 2009, we tried to have Gen Con Oz and it didn't quite carry, and we've been trying to get a really strong board game con ever since, and we finally did with PAX Aus, and it's great. If you go to PAX Aus, it's really important to know that there is a huge tabletop element there, and in fact the con is, as I say, divided in half. You'll find lots of tabletop talks up in the talk section. You'll find lots of role-playing sessions. It's not exactly like Gen Con where there's a huge sealed off area of tons and tons of D&D tables. There's not a huge amount of LARPs going on, but there is a big open area where there are about 40 games of role-playing games going on all day, every day, which is great. There's also a huge open board game library area where you can just grab a table, grab some friends, meet some new friends, play board games. Also important is the board game section is less crowded, even though, as I say, it is sort of half and half in terms of space. There's a huge concentration of people around the front end of the computer game area where everyone wants to see the hottest new releases, and it slowly trickles back until you can move around. So if you want to have a nice break from the terrible crowds and you've checked out a few computer game things, come to the board game area. It also, importantly, computer games shuts about 5 or 6 p.m. They completely shut down that half of the hall, and board gaming goes through to about midnight. So, you know, the computer gamers all have to go home and get their sleep because they're all, I don't know, crybabies or something, and we just keep on gaming on and on and on into the night, as we always have done in the board gaming world. You'll see a couple of big companies there, but it's mostly Australian companies who show up. We have a few international guests, which is lovely. And there are some opportunities to meet publishers. If you really want to hook into the Australian design scene, one of the best things you can do though is go to DevCon, which happens the Thursday before the PAX every year. So it's at 4 p.m. the Thursday night before the con opens, and that is the preeminent convention for all Australian publishers and designers in the tabletop industry. And you can find out more about that on the TGDA website, which is the Tabletop Game Designers of Australia. Also, they have a great Facebook presence. So if you're interested in any kind of Australian game design, look up the TGDA, get hooked in. They run DevCon. They also run a booth where you can pay money to show off your game and demo it to other people. They're also a driving force behind organizing the Collaboratory, which is a great thing. I'll say that again, Collaboratory. It is basically, so PAX has always been a huge supporter of local game design companies. It was all computer games for the first 8 or 9 years though, but they finally realized that tabletop is a huge area of game design, and there's a huge Australian game design scene. So we now have the Collaboratory where they pick, I think about 30 or 40 entrants from Australian designers, of which I think there was more than 100 this year. And they get to demo their games for 2 sessions, 4 hours each. I'll be showing off a game called Snatch Phrase this year, so you can find me there. There's just going to be tons and tons of games though, from the very early start to the later on. And also, on Saturday night, there's a thing called Collaboratory Night of the Living Games, or Night of the Living Games Dead. I forget what it's called, but it's basically 5 games from the Collaboratory last year to see how far they've come in development, some of which have been published since then. I think most of them have been published since then, and they'll also be doing a talk, some of those guys, to say, hey, this is what happened in the industry since then, which is a great way to get insight into the process. So make sure you come to the TGA booth and say hello. Come to DevCon if you're interested in publishing. Come along to the Collaboratory and see all the amazing talent and play some games. Drop into the game section and play some games there. Sign up to some RPGs. There's all sorts of stuff to be done, and it's all in the same area, all in the board game area. If you have a little bit of time, you can wander into computer games. I like to check every now and then, just see what the hell they're doing, but who cares about computer games? It's not where the thing happens at PAX. There's so much going on though. You will run out of things to do. Oh, one last final thing. Do not forget the Diversity Lounge. It's a lovely little room upstairs between the lecture halls up on the top floor of the main speaking hall. It's a place where you can go and drop in if you're LGBTQIA, etc., and feel like you're in a safe space. But they also run lots of lovely events there, and I'll be there from 3 p.m. on Sunday teaching you how to make your very first board game. So it's a really great space, it's really fun, and a lot of people just spend their entire con there because they know they're in a nice safe space. But there's also tons of events and funs and giveaways. So check that out, wander around. There's often displays as well of art and games. It's a really amazing creative space. Oh, and also we'll be making a game in an hour on Friday night as well at 6:30 p.m. Come along to that. You get to see us make games in a cauldron of pure creativity, and you'll learn a lot about the process as well. You will probably miss something because there's so much going on, but that's why you come back next year and find even more exciting things to do. PAX is good fun. There's lots of good people. Take it easy, find all the wonderful things to do, and take time to say hello to your fellow game designers. And yeah, shake their hand because we don't bite. We're having lots of fun. We'll see you there. All right, I'll talk to you next time. This is Steve signing off. Be good, play games, have fun, pat dogs.